Welcome to the YouTube edition of the Storywise Podcast. This segment is just part of a full 1-hour interview which you can hear on iTunes and at JenGrisantiConsultancy.com.
Welcome to Storywise, the podcast designed to give you the in-depth story behind some of our top storytellers as a way to inform, motivate, and inspire you to believe that you too can make your dreams a reality. My name is Jen Grisanti. I am the story career consultant at Jen Grisanti Consultancy, Inc., a writer's consultancy designed to help you accomplish your writing goals and reach your career destination. I am thrilled. I am beyond excited, very, very excited to have with me as my guest today, Ted Humphrey. Ted is currently the co-executive producer on The Good Wife, the hit television show on CBS. And let me tell you a little bit about Ted's background, which is so impressive. Ted is a graduate of Georgetown University and Virginia School of Law. He practiced law for 2 years in Washington, D.C., before coming to Los Angeles to work in film and television. Among his film scripts are sci-fi thriller Dust for Warner Brothers and director Jan Debon.
Jan Debon.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Jan Debon. Oh, I like that name. And The Rook, a crime thriller for Alcon Entertainment. Top of the World, a drama for Hyde Park Entertainment and Mandeville Pictures. Horror thriller Viral for MGM, Aztec, an action-adventure epic for Montecito Pictures and DreamWorks, and 215 for HBO Original Films. His script, The Code, was made into a 2008 feature film starring Morgan Freeman and Antonio Banderas. He began his television career with the critically acclaimed CBS drama Now and Again, and continued as a writer and producer on shows such as the ABC drama The Nine and CBS dramas Shark and The Unit. He also... You didn't write all these pilots. Did you write all?
How many are there?
Oh, my gosh. He has also written numerous television pilots, including the ABC drama Paradise and the FX drama Crooked River, and recently developed a British version of Crooked River for BBC in conjunction with Scott Free Entertainment. Wow. Ted is currently, as I mentioned at the beginning, co-executive producer and writer of the CBS drama The Good Wife, starring Juliana Margulies, and he is also developing a new pilot with CBS Paramount.
Right.
Yeah. He lives in Los Angeles with his wife and 2 children. Welcome, Ted.
Glad to be here.
Wow. That's a lot.
Now, most of that stuff, you realize, never got made. I mean, I got paid to write it,
yes.
but it never got made.
Now, I do want to get into that, because I certainly know with the feature world, most of that never sees the light of day. But still, to have all those production companies attached and to be paid to write those scripts, I mean, that's an amazing accomplishment.
Just means I've been around a while.
I think it's great. You were very young to have accomplished all this. I'm very impressed. So, why don't we start with The Good Wife, and then I want to go back to like practicing law and your whole journey into feature work first, yes?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I want to hear about that. With The Good Wife, which is one of my absolute favorite shows on TV right now. I love it.
Oh,
I honestly am one of the biggest fans.
It's so much fun to hear that. It never gets old.
Every single episode, I'm mesmerized with. It just evolves and grows, and you're just like, oh, my God, it's one of those must-sees for me, which is very rare,
That's really great to hear.
Yeah, no, so proud of you guys. I'm curious on this show, and also with your law background, how does the breaking of story work?
It's tough. It's very labor-intensive on this show. We're in... The writers are in pretty much all day, every day.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a bear. It
so
really
you
is.
all break story together, and then the individual writer goes off
That's
with
right.
the script.
That's right. Which is, I will say that's the way most of the shows that I've worked on have worked.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. I know.
Not all of them, but most of them, yeah.
Yeah.
And certainly most of the ones that have worked the best, I think.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Because when I hear, I think there are only a few shows, probably like Once and Again and the Law and Orders, that more the writer went off on their own and wrote the scripts on some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's, it's tough. The legal stuff, it's funny because we're not really... We're sort of kind of a legal procedural,
Right.
I mean, it started out. I'm sure that the network thought that it was going to be a lot more of a legal procedural, and I mean, in fact, they did some testing early on, and the purpose of the testing was to find out, did we have the right balance between
personal and
professional,
yeah.
Because the balance was a lot more skewed towards the personal and the the B and C stories, basically, as we would call them, than most of the CBS shows. And I think they were expecting that the answer that would come back is no, we need more A-story procedural. And the answer that came back was, you have the balance exactly right. Don't change it. And
that's fascinating.
As soon as they got that answer, they left us alone. And they have, so really we are 50-50 A-story, B-story, whereas, I mean, that's definitely a lot more than most CBS procedurals do.
And I would have to say, it's interesting because I covered Numbers for 2.5 years, and Numbers was the same thing, like in the sense of having to speak to the personal as well as the case, and really being able to blend the two well together. And Scott Free did both, and so I definitely think, you guys have mastered the blending of those two things, because they're very difficult components to really blend well. And I think one thing I've noticed that I love about The Good Wife is it actually bleeds the personal into the professional.
Yeah, it's tough, and it is. I don't tend to be super analytical about these things in the first place,
right?
But even if I were, I sort of jokingly say, because we talk about this a lot when we meet, we've just gone through the process of hiring some new writers for next season.
Right.
And so I was in all of those meetings, and in all those meetings we sort of talk about this, and I always said, it kind of happens by osmosis. It's like there's no real formula for it. First of all, one of the things that makes the show so difficult to break is that every episode is different.
Yeah.
And we don't... I worked, by way of comparison, on a show called Shark that was a CBS legal procedural that really was a traditional. I mean, it was more like 80 or 90% A story and 10 to 20% B story. And every episode, in the vein of a Law and Order or something like that, every episode began more or less exactly the same way. There was a murder, and then the team came onto the scene, much the way that a CSI begins or something like that. And with our stories, we just begin right in the middle of cases. We begin, we try and sort of pick what are weird areas of the law that most legal shows don't get into very much, like, probate. We've done a couple of episodes in probate court, or we did an episode that was about jury tampering. We did an episode that took place largely in the jury room, where you were trying, and the things like that. And so when you start every episode in a different place, that kind of makes it doubly hard. And then we just try and figure out what's interesting, but it's definitely difficult.
Working.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear. It really is.
It is. No, I'm telling you, from a story analyst's point of view, it's usually I can figure out so many little things, because I've done it for 20 years, that could work out better. And this show is so incredibly well developed and well done, to where I'm going, that was perfect. Like, I want to remember how to teach writers how to do that.
A lot of that, I have to say, is Robert King, Robert and Michelle King created the show.
Right.
I actually mentioned
they're amazing.
Oh,
they're amazing. I loved their episode Unorthodox as well. I thought
it's funny. I really like that episode too, and a lot of people, including they, don't really.
I love that episode.
It's not one of their favorites. Let's put it that way. And it was, that was one that was a real bear. They wrote a script, and they ended up like totally rewriting it, and it went through a lot of trouble, and like internally in the process of the show, it set us back, because so much time was spent on that episode that then we had to catch up, which happens on shows during the course of the year.
And yet I talk to, every time I say to somebody that, not before now, because the last 5 episodes have been so excellent, but I'll say to people when we'll talk about The Good Wife, I'll say, oh, my favorite episode. People will stop me and say Unorthodox.
People love it. They do.
Yeah.
And it's funny, it goes to how The perception on a show sometimes, I always say it's like you work in a sausage factory, so you know how the sausage is made. And when you know how the sausage is made, you don't want to eat the sausage. You know? And so the perception inside the show is often so different from the perception
from outside.
Yeah.
Well, and your last 2 episodes have been outstanding. I mean, that's why I say with the show, like you always think most shows on television will have like 3 or 4 standout episodes a year within the season. And the Good Wife has just started this escalation and stayed with it. So I thought I give you guys so much credit for that. I think that's great.
It is. I mean, that's, first of all, thank you. And that's really nice to hear. You know, it really is. Robert and Michelle, they're not TV people originally. I mean, they're primarily, Robert is a feature guy.
Okay.
They did create a TV show before this. It was called Injustice. It was on ABC.
Yeah.
But I think it only lasted half a season or something. You know?
Right.
So this is only really their second TV experience.
Wow.
And, you know.
Kudos.
Sometimes, well, you know, it's funny. Sometimes when you work in TV, you kind of learn, David Kelly always used to say this, that, you know, you're going to do 22 episodes or whatever, and hopefully 10 of them are going to be great, and, you know, 5 of them are going to be mediocre, and 5 of them are probably going to be lousy, you know, and that's okay, and you move on. And I don't know that Robert's ever internalized that. So he really,
he wants,
you know, he wants every episode to be great, and they're not all great, but he wants every episode to be great, and he works very hard to try and make every episode great, and the rest of us, you know, follow his lead and work very hard.
I love that attitude, though. I think that's a beautiful attitude.
It is.
Because, you know, if you strive for that, I look at you guys and I look at Glee, and Glee blows me away too.
It's a fun show.
You know, such a fun show.
And Modern Family has really been fun this year.
Go at Modern Family is excellent.
Yeah.
So what was I going to say? Now, getting into, I definitely want to ask you about, you mentioned that you guys just hired some new writers, so congrats to them.
Yeah.
What goes into that process? What scripts did you read? What did you look for in the writers that you chose?
We were looking for, and again, this process was largely driven by Robert and Michelle, and you know, in terms of, I mean, it was driven kind of by both of us in a sense, in the sense that they were driving it from the standpoint of what are they looking for in the writing, and I was driving it from the standpoint of what am I looking for in somebody in the room, you know,
right.
which they're looking for as well.
Good combination for you guys to look at both of those.
And they you know, we were very much looking for a cinematic quality to the writing, first of all. I mean, first of all, as far as people in the room, it's a given, you know, almost any show would say this, you want people who are fun to work with and easy to work with, and who are energetic and enthusiastic and, you know, brilliant and have great ideas, and, you know, all the kind of, I mean, we've all worked on shows or had experiences on shows where people were difficult, and so you try and avoid those experiences if you can. And also this show, I mean, there are a lot of things about it that are tough, and there's no need to make it tougher in that respect.
Right.
As far as the writing, definitely a cinematic quality to it, definitely strong character work. I think, you know, what that translated to for us is really original material work.
Thank you for listening. You can hear this interview in its entirety along with dozens more on the Storywise podcast. Just go to iTunes or JenGrisantiConsultancy.com.